body, soul, and spirit. And as I said that, something happened to me. Well, on the way to the den for that Wednesday broadcast, something happened to the point that I had to stop the car. It was like something was taking over me. And I know it's God, of course. But it was confusing because I'd never experienced something quite like this. And so when I got to the den, I was pretty normal again, and we did the first song. And then suddenly the same thing happened. I started being taken away. I heard two angels speaking to each other. And it was like, and then since then I've prayed, and the Lord spoke to me today specifically, said, Kim, I have transferred something into you that has been kept for such a time as this. And this is not just for you. It is to be transferred to the many that follow and hear the word of the prophet, because once one gets hold of it, 1,000 shall begin to chase it. One shall chase 1,000, two shall chase 10,000. In other words, that's what I'm trying to say is, this is not just for me. It would be very self-centered if that was the case. There is going to be something that was transferred to me, transferred to you as well from God, possibly through me in a meeting, but that's how he works. The same thing happened when Moses took the mantle from Aaron. Aaron died and was transferred. It is important that you understand that there is a transference that has to come through one of God's voices or ministers or one of his instruments. And in this instant, it's me. And so I'm believing that what he said to me is going to happen to you, that this is going to be transferred to you. Because God said something about this, the summer months that are very vital, that things that have been locked up and closed for centuries, millennia, actually going to be released right now. And we are part of that. So I'm going through this, and it's happening. It could happen today again. I don't know. But just hold tight. Everybody, hold tight, because there's a supernatural presence of God. It's transferring through me to you that believe in his word and believe in present day events and what he's about to do in the future. Just get ready. It's going to come to you. Many of you saw what happened to me on Wednesday. Do you know that I've entered in a whole new world? And that day I prayed a prayer in my garden. Then I prayed the prayer before we went on with Hannah and Miranda and Sunil. And then when we went on, I prayed it again, realizing that it pleased God so much that he actually did it. And I used these words. I was telling him how great he was, his joy, his peace, his mercy, his kindness, his compassion. I said, I want to tell you about how really wonderful you are. And I said, with the hosts of heaven, please join me now as I do this. And then, the birds began to sing so beautifully. And you know why the bees even came close to me? Because they're sensing a fragrance. It's really weird. A whole lot of bees just came. I don't like bees. And it's like my spirit, God was saying, this garden is so filled with fragrances that they've never, ever sensed. That they started, a bird, it was just like they all came around the garden. And that because they sensed the sweetness of the presence of God. And I was telling him all these things about himself and how I loved him and then I got into this and I said, you are omnipresent. You are omnipotent. You are omniscient. Infallible. You are immutable, and you are transferable. As those words came out of my mouth, I thought, can you imagine God can transfer within a split second something into you that can change your entire life? I'm talking about his spiritual things, but also he can change your life within a second. But he needs you to do something as well. And the sacrifice and the offering is a very important thing. Exodus chapter 3. Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Okay? And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in the flame of fire from the midst of the bush. Sunil, are you around here? What was that interpretation you got for it? I think you gave me a translation. Come, stand here. The flame of fire proceeding from the bush. Something like or lightning from the bush. Okay. So this is what we were looking at. When Sunil was telling me about Fire Point and what he discovered from my prophecies, I was overwhelmed. I was so excited that I just thought I'd teach this little principle, then we'll all gather and give and sow into what? The revelation of Fire Point, so we can all be a part of the breakthrough, that God would accelerate his word, okay? But the interpretation, not the interpretation, one of the translations of the He looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, and the bush was not consumed.
Yes.
I've taught this before, but I'm just going to teach it very quickly so you can get the principle. So here we go. A fire comes from the bush. Say it again, the translation.
The verse says, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush.
Appeared from a flame of fire from the midst of the bush, of a bush. Okay.
Yes.
That's very interesting to start with, because here Moses himself has this incredible move of the Spirit where he walks by and there's a bush and there's a flame proceeding out of the bush. Now, what's amazing is most people don't know this, but Moses carried on walking. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning. Then Moses said, I will now turn aside. Another translation says, I'll turn back. So he must have looked at it, just casual observation, walked by, and then said, no, I'm going to turn back and see, which means look a little bit further. This great sight and why the bush does not burn. But I want you to understand today is that unless you look further, when something is revealed to you, it cannot come out and reveal what it has in it. In other words, you will not perceive any further. You'll hear about it, but Moses had to proceed and go back and see, which means not casual observation, but acute observation. When God gives me a word and I throw out something like fire point or a dolphin or look to the sea or Saturn, when these things come out, it's fine to do that and forget about it. But what we do is we say, we're going to take this further. We want further perception and knowledge about this. So Sunil begins to work with a whole group of code breakers, and they begin to find out what it means. They're looking a little bit deeper. They're searching. They're taking sight, and they're extending that sight. But this is not just for them. This is for the children of Israel, because that light, that fire was going to be transferred to the children of Israel so that millions of people could receive deliverance when that fire was translated into a fire by night, into a pillar of fire that would not only lead Moses, but would lead the people of Israel. In other words, what I hear, when I have a revelation that comes to me, this must be transformed into a pillar of light so that millions of people can take advantage of it and be free from slavery, free from bondage, free from financial bondage. You know what I'm saying? In other words, this revelation any man of God or woman of God gets, it must be for the purpose of the advantage and the progress of the people of God. So today we're going to see what happened. God speaks to Moses, tells him, I want you to take the children of Israel and we're going to get them out of bondage. Do you know that there's a bondage upon the people of God this very moment? And that is that they are dictated to by the economy of this world. And you know what? There are some of you that are not dictated to by the economy. You're not being controlled by it. This ministry is not being controlled by it. And here's the thing I was going to tell you. When God blesses the spiritual leader that you are under, that blessing must come to you and your households. It has to. If you receive it, if you sow into it. On Wednesday, I sat here. It was almost embarrassing afterwards to look at, as my whole entire body shook. I had to read out of Daniel to make you understand that what I was experiencing was a fire. You know what, Sunil, you were asking me early on because I was so involved in preparing. Yes. I didn't answer you correctly. Sunil noted, and you can share this with them. Sunil noticed something, and they will tell you, I very seldom do this, but my body started to jerk like that, and I felt like I'd left.
Yes.
But something was placed in my hand, and Sunil noticed. Show them what you noticed.
It was more than just quivering. It was like this, like something was hitting. It was too hot, or like you're being branded, or something. That's how I felt when I saw it.
So it came to me, and I realized at the time that I was being burnt. And at one stage, I even said stop, because I thought this was going to consume and hurt me physically. Yeah. And I said this afterwards, and please, everybody pay attention, because the Spirit of God is here right now, and in a very, very powerful way. I can sense Him all over me again. Something very special was deposited that night. Something was transferred to me on Wednesday. And the only way that I can say it, and now I'm realizing it, when I was caught away, I was hearing angels talking. I was speaking about some nuclear stuff. What I was sensing, there was a weapon that nobody knew about yet. Even though Israel's got one, there's something else out there and it's hidden. And God will not allow it to be hidden for much longer. It's going to be revealed. I saw it in that dream, but I was frightened. It was a frightening situation for me. what I've sensed was, and I quoted Daniel. He said his palms were trembling. The palms of his hands were trembling. When I was here that day in the Spirit, something was being put into my hands, and God was saying, I'm transferring something. Now, I want you to move to this morning, because this morning when I was praying, just before I came out here, the same thing happened again. I had my hands held, and I suddenly sensed this. And I don't do that, guys. And again, I said to him, I said these words, what are you putting into my hand? And I understand now that it was fire. I understand now that it was something that was burning me. Because not...
I want you to my arms forever. I am blessed with so many beautiful things, but I think the best is you. You are the most valuable things I've ever had in my life. I don't want to lose you.
Not only is this just about fire point and about the fire of God, it is so much more that's going to happen, that is about to take place. I don't have all the understanding of it, but I do know this. God has transferred something to me, and it's being transferred to you as well. Something deeply spiritual that's going to do wondrous things, surround you with songs of deliverance. Yeah. I sense that fire in my hands. Joel, get back to your position if you don't mind. It's just, there's something happening right now. There's so many people being touched. And I was just under the influence of this future. This future revelation. I don't have it all now. I cannot tell you it all now. God's still ministering me about it. I'm still going into my garden, and I can sense things happening. And so I know He's not finished. He did say summer He would reveal many things for our advantage, for our children, for our generation, for our future, for our families, for our industry, our ministries, everything. He's here right now to do it for us. Now, I'm not one of those people that says, I'm going to send you something so you can get this fire. But this morning I was praying, and I took water and I poured it out of the bottle. And He said it's to do with water and it's to do with rain. It's to do with water and to do with fire. And so I took the water out and I poured it in my garden today. And I held up my hand, and it was absolutely burning. And I threw it out, and I said, and I cannot tell you everything He said because it's not for now. But I took the water and poured it out. And then I wanted to pour it on my hand, and I didn't. And the Lord said, what is about to happen, it has to do with water and with fire. Now, we've heard that before, but I felt like... one point, sometime these next 2 weeks, I'm going to get the people to take just a regular bottle of water. You don't have to buy it from me. A regular bottle of water. And I want you to hold it up. And I don't know how you're going to have to put a pot down where you are, because I want you to do it with us. And I want you to pour that water out. And I know something's going to happen. You may say, well, I've never heard of such a silly thing. Well, God spoke in times past for men of God and women to do things that were crazy. He spoke to Jacob and told him that while the livestock were conceiving, at that point he said, before this all happened, he said, I want you to take a branch of a tree and I want you to slice it so that they'll come forth striped. You can read the story later on. It's a fascinating story of a man doing the most ridiculous thing that made him the wealthiest man on the face of the earth. Sometimes God requires us to do crazy things. Nobody knew about that, just Jacob and the angel. But let me tell you something, the stock that was born turned out to be striped, exactly the way he dictated to in that crazy move. We'll do it at the right time. I want you to understand that this is not the time to be dictated to and put into bondage and slavery, when in fact there is fire present for us to be freed, so that the pillar of fire by night will lead us to our promised land. The land overflowing, not flowing, overflowing with milk and honey, with gold and honey. That pretty?
Beautiful.
Let's pray together. Something is definitely happening here. Father, I don't have to beg people. What you have transferred.
The passion of your love drives me crazy, and your one look steals my heart. Your love has a magical spell on me. It makes me something that I'm not in my life. Baby, I feel the intense passion of your love.
What you are transferring to me, you are transferring to your people. Lord, I got the word today that sounded crazy. Many philanthropists, people that will rise up and say, in the name of Christ, I will be the one to bless you. When disaster comes, they will be the ones to say, I can make it happen for you. I can help your children. I can help your family. I can help my nation. I'm praying right now that, Lord, as you reveal yourself to your people, that you would speak to everybody, and that this prayer that I pray today, that you would multiply our givers. When we come to the altar, as we're going to do right now, that you'd speak to every person that has not done this or does it very seldom. And Lord, I pray you'd speak to them and show them that they can be a part of a mighty army and be debt free and conquer their mountain this year. I'm asking you now to speak to every one of my warriors and show them what they must give, and sow into the fire. I'll say this to you, everybody, and read Psalm 78, then I'll pray. We can pray together. That as you sowed, as you put your faith out there today, that God brings this to you. Listen to this. In Psalm 78, verse 12, it says, marvelous things he did in the sight of their fathers. In the land of Egypt, field of Zoan, he divided the sea and caused them to pass through, and he made the waters to stand up like a heap. In the daytime he led them with a cloud, and all the night with a pillar of fire, a light of fire. He split the rock in the wilderness and gave them drink in abundance like the depths. He also brought streams out of the rock. Waters to run like rivers. I would like to say this to you. If he did it then, why can he not do it now? If he could bring water from a rock, which is not the appropriate place to bring water from, he can do it today. If you are in the wilderness, you're in problems, they had no water. God was able to do it. Let's put him in that position where we say, God, we're in a difficult place. We need water from a rock. Now, I'm just leading you as best I can by my prophecies. There's many other prophetic words that you can go and study. And then you decide yourself. You go and pray. Say, Lord, open my eyes that I may behold wondrous things from your word. That I may understand that me and my house may benefit. There's nothing wrong with that. God delights and takes pleasure in the prosperity of his people. This is not a prosperity message. This is about getting a lot of people out of trouble. Relationships breaking up because of financial difficulties. Children not being educated because of financial difficulties. Tension in the home. We don't want this. This is not what God purposed. I pray for each one of you today, couples, families that have tension in their home. for whatever reason, I'm praying, God, that you would intervene. Lead us, Lord God. And as Sunil is so skillfully opened up these treasure chests, let us be led by your Spirit, Lord. I pray for peace upon each one that passes all understanding. And I thank you for being our Heavenly Father. Abba, Father.